Welcome back, folks. Everyone else will be back within about 40 seconds.
Nice cat, Doug.
Why, thank you. I'm trying to get him to look, but he won't. It's like I'm choking him. Hey, there you go.
You and Eileen can bond over cat issues.
My
Oh,
cat's not coming in.
all right.
She is just too disruptive.
Mine is unstoppable, but fortunately, once he comes into the picture, he calms down and just hangs out. So,
No, she walks right back and forth
ah.
and rubs up against it, purrs loudly. So.
All right, here we go.
Yep.
Everyone's coming back into the Instruments of Calling large group. And those of you who were on earlier are going to know we found Tom. I'm going to now mute everyone so that we don't have any feedback. So if you need to speak, make sure you unmute yourself at that time. But welcome back.
Morning, everybody.
Tom, you're muted. Unmute, Tom.
Sorry, Thomas, I just said I muted everyone, so you need to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Saline from St. Joseph's Parish in Austintown. Sorry, I had trouble connecting with you all, but I'm connected now and I'm ready to Zoom. Welcome to St. Joe's folks. Chris, special welcome to Chris, to Teresa, and to Josh. And I hope you had good conversations in your small groups about your calling experience. I invite you now to define for yourselves what calling is by completing this simple sentence. Calling is blank. Calling is blank. Take a few minutes in light of your conversations and your own reflections on calling. Take a few minutes to consider how you would define in your own words calling. Calling is blank. And then if you're interested in sharing your definition, your personal definition, please open the chat room at the bottom of the screen and key in your definition, and we'll take a look. We'll take a look at a sampling of those definitions. So, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, to think about your definition of calling, and start chatting, please. Oh, Gail, Gail Catanella says that calling is persistence. Thanks, Gail. Nelson said that it's learning to listen, like you did in the small groups, and follow the Spirit. Marilyn said that it's helping how you can. That's an action calling. Thanks, Marilyn. Robin Woodbury says that calling is ongoing. Yeah, every moment of every day, if we're attuned. Thanks, Robin. Anybody else? If you're like me, takes a while for you to click the keys. Okay. Calling's inevitable, Josh Potkanowicz says. Diana says that calling is finding the places you can to share the love of Christ. Reminds me what Pope Francis says about encounter in Christ. Calling is unexpected, Logan says. Kathy, she says calling is doing what's needed to be done. It's a vocation, JT Duke says, following the direction of the Holy Spirit and using gifts. Eileen says that calling is allowing yourself to be open to the voice of God in your life. Nikki Cannon sounds like an engineer here. It's a constant alignment that we as people have purpose. God calls us for purpose. Chris says it's agape, love in action. Good New Testament answer, Chris. And Doug says it's getting involved with people. Yeah, God doesn't call us for our own edification. God calls us to love people. Well, anybody else? Well, I'm impressed with these definitions, and I feel like I've been part of the group since you started. So, thank you. Now Robin Woodbury is going to share with you some other experiences in which you experience God's calling. Robin Woodbury, take it away.
Why, thank you, Tom. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. Good morning again to everyone. I am Robin Woodbury. For those of you who do not know, my home parish is St. John's Episcopal in Youngstown. Yay! Reverend Gail is my priest, and I am serving at a field ed assignment in Hudson at Christ Church in Hudson, where Reverend Charlotte Collins Reed is the rector there. And so I say hello to my Christchurch family as well, St. John's family. So on this particular part of this training, we're going to take a look at 8 windows into calling conversation. And we'll be doing a video, but you know, we need to understand that God calls within the particular experiences that we have in our daily lives. So we've kind of been alluding to that this morning. Whatever is happening to us on any given day is the context of the calling. And when we hear that call, we have a powerful opportunity to discover a unique expression of the divine. And so if we're falling in love, you know, we're being called into that relationship to experience God through human connection. If we're mourning the death of a loved one, we're being called in the experience of grief to discover God as the healer who moves through sadness to acceptance and peace. And if we're pondering a career change like I did, right? We're being called to explore why or explore how our God-given gifts and how they align into the world and its needs. And so every part of what we do pretty much every day ties in some kind of way to a calling. So we're going to watch a video, which is going to break down each window of the calls. And we're going to, after each window, we're going to take a pause and play in our journals for a second and engage with each other a little bit, and then we'll move on until we get through all 8 of our calling windows. If you would give me a second to share my screen. Make sure that I'm doing this the right way.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, you all can see that, right? If you
Yes.
nod, that would be good. Okay, so I'm going to start playing it. If you can hear it, just nod so I know that it is working. Okay.
In the All Called initiative and in this Instruments of Calling training program, we identify what we call 8 windows for calling conversations. We call them windows because they are openings that allow us to see God's activity in the lives of people we know. Your friends, family members, acquaintances, or even strangers might open these windows for you and create opportunities for you to start a calling conversation. We believe these 8 calling windows cover a wide array of human experiences that people have that could open their hearts to spiritual discernment. These experiences invite people into deeper reflection on the meanings and movements of love in their lives. They're also relatively common. And what I mean by that is they are not these booming voices in the sky experiences. They're very natural human experiences that are loaded with spiritual depth. It's really so easy to encounter the goodness of God in daily life. We can learn to notice and pay attention to the many callings we experience each day, and then respond to these callings in loving ways. So now let's take a look at each one of the 8 windows. Experiencing love is the pinnacle of human existence. Nothing matters more. God's identity is love, and love is the most powerful calling that we all have. Love binds us together, keeps us connected. Hearing and responding to the call to work on our relationships is a key to spiritual maturity. And when we find that our relationships are suffering, we are called to forgive and accept forgiveness to reconnect our relationships. God, the connector, calls us in the experience of love and opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine connection in human love.
Okay, so in your journal on page 6, as we reflect about building loving relationships, which was window number 1, I want you to just name 2 or 3 people with whom you experience a loving relationship. You can do that in your journal or think about them in your head. And after you get those people in your head, think of others, think of these others as instruments of calling for you. Okay. So I want you to begin to think about a couple of people and the kind of relationships that you have with them and how they might be instruments of calling for you. Okay, you don't have to put it in the chat or anything. I just want you to kind of reflect on that. And I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And after you kind of get an idea on where you're at with that, then also want to ask the question, what have you learned about God through these particular relationships, these 2 or 3 people that you brought to your mind, and how they factored in as instruments of calling for you? And what have you learned about God through those relationships? Okay, and again, this journal for you is going to be extremely valuable. I hope it'll be a great resource. So you will also have a chance to go back through some of these things and reflect on them once we're done with this training in your own personal time. But it's important to know that this Instruments of Calling program that we're engaging in here is going to help your church members notice when someone is experiencing a call to go deeper. And they can do that in a loving relationship, and they can help equip those church members to respond in helpful ways. So we will go on now to our second window.
God is calling you right now, no matter who you are and no matter what is going on in your life. Every person has God-given gifts that can guide them to a sense of purpose. God calls us through these gifts, and the more we know about who we are and the value that is in us, the more clearly we can hear the callings. When we are out of touch with who we are, with what really matters to us, we can feel stuck. Life seems to be going nowhere or in circles. But God, the gift giver, calls us in our core identity and opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine creativity as we pursue meaning and purpose.
Okay. So again, in your journal, now on page 7, I want you to think broadly about your gifts, not just what you can do, but also who you are. Gifts include things like patience, perseverance, creativity, strong learner, good listener, faithful friend, lover of nature, worker for justice, good at organizing. You get the picture. I want you to think about your gifts, who you are, what you entail. And the importance of this particular window is oftentimes people don't think they have anything to bring to the table or anything to offer, but they do. So think about what your gifts are. And again, you can write them in your journal or just have them in your head. And when you go back home, you can take time to go through the rest of these questions. This program is going to help your church members notice when someone is stuck in their life purpose discernment process. And it will help equip your church members to respond in helpful ways. We'll move on now to our third window.
Is the meaning of work just to get a paycheck? The paycheck is important, but people who work only for the money have a hard time finding joy in their work. Connecting with coworkers, producing a meaningful product or service, believing your work makes a difference, all of these are part of the callings we hear at work. God the Creator calls us to shift our perspective to gratitude and collaboration and service. And God opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine creativity in daily work.
So this particular window in your journal on page 8, you will have questions that you can answer. But have you ever thought about your work as a calling? Some people do, but have you ever thought about it as calling? Have you ever thought about what you do as a calling and more than just a paycheck? And how is seeing your work as a calling a way to experience your work as more meaningful? Think about that. Jot down some things in your journal. How is seeing your work as a calling a way to experience your work as more meaningful? Some of you are school teachers, some of you are college professors, some of you are in the tech field. We're all over the gamut here, but what you do is more than just a job. So how do you see that? How do you see your calling fitting into what you do? This program will help your church members notice when someone is trying to find meaning in their work life and will equip your church members to respond in helpful ways. You guys all with me? Nod your head, put your fingers up. All right, stay with me. We're moving through it. We're moving through it. Let's move on to the next window.
Family life is filled with transitions, from single to married, from married to divorced, from couple without children to parenting, from career to retirement, and many more, many more. All transitions include a call to let go and to move on. God, who resurrects, calls us to move through transitions with hope and opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine transformation in life stage changes.
Okay, so I'm sure that we've all experienced some type of a transition as we move through our life, and he named several of them, moving from single to being married, moving from married to being divorced, moving from a couple to now having children, and from a career into retirement. Some of you on here are retired. And so those are all life transitions that we have experienced or will at some point experience probably. So in your journal on page 9, again, our questions, I just want to present one to you, and that is identify one life transition in which you experienced a particularly powerful call from God. Think about that in your head. Just one life transition in which you experienced a particularly powerful call from God in that thing. And these are all stories that you'll be able to share with others as you're helping them move into their calling or discover their calling. This program will help your church members notice when someone is moving through a significant life transition, and will help your church members to respond in helpful ways to them. Our next window.
Offering up close and personal care for a person in serious need is a unique experience. Taking care of a sick family member or working in the healthcare field puts you in touch with deep human need in a profound way. This kind of care is a unique call from God to grow in empathy and compassion. We're called to shuffle schedules, and sometimes to reorganize finances and other priorities, all in the service of caring for someone in need. God, the healer, calls us to intimate responses when suffering is right in front of us, and God opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine vulnerability in a suffering person.
Gosh, what an awesome window, yeah? Caring for a person in need. He said right at the end that God, the healer, calls us to intimate responses when suffering is right in front of us, and opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine vulnerability in a suffering person. And right now we're in some crazy times, and there are people who are suffering, and part of our calling may be to cross the paths of those people. And how are we gonna reach into their lives? So in your journal on page 10, the question I want you to just begin to mill on and reflect on is you don't have to write it right now, but just think about a time when you were up close and personal with a person in profound need. Think about a time when you were up close and personal with a person in profound need. And again, these questions will help to prompt the rest of the questions that you have in your journal. When you have time to go back through, you will be able to build upon those other questions. Window 6, sacrificing for others.
What happens when an emergency or a disaster strikes? Who will help? Parents, friends, healthcare workers, first responders, journalists, and those in the military find themselves called to sacrifice for others. There is a unique call that some people experience that compels them to put the well-being and safety of others above their own. There are moments when calling shows up in danger. God calls us to decisive, caring action. God may call us to move in the direction of danger when needs are urgent. And God opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine courage in moments of crisis.
It certainly takes, I think, special people and a special call to run towards trouble. Most of us are running away from it when it's happening, but there is a special call to run towards trouble, to run towards something that others may deem dangerous, and being willing to sacrifice for the sake of others. And so in your journal on page 11, I want you to describe a time or think about a time when you sacrificed in a significant way for someone or some group, or describe or think of a time when you were inspired by the sacrifice someone else made for others, or maybe they even made it for you. Think about one of those times. This program will help your church members notice when someone is sensing that their call is to help in crisis situations. And we will help your church members to respond in helpful ways. We're coming down the pike, you guys. Window 7.
Loss has many faces. The loss of a job, the loss of family or friends to death, the loss of family or friends due to interpersonal conflict, the loss of a marriage to divorce, the loss of mobility as one gets older. Loss includes a call to acknowledge our fragility and our need for others. It is an illusion to think that we can make it through life with pure individual effort. Loss reminds us that the personal connections we have with others are life essentials. God, who heals and restores, calls us to accept loss as a journey through weakness and opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine peace as we rest in the supportive arms of those who love us.
And in today's times, in this pandemic and crazy world that we live in, people are experiencing loss at great levels. And so how do we deal with that? What do we do with that? Where does that fit into our calling? In your journal on page 12, I want you to think about a significant loss that you've experienced. That can be very painful, I know. But think about it. We want to draw from that pain what we need to be a help for other people and help guide other people through their pain they may be experiencing through loss. So think about a significant loss that you may have experienced. And then think about from that loss, how was your own experience of fragility a way to connect with God? Because if we can begin to identify that, then we will be able to be a help to others going through the process. And this program will help your church members notice when someone is suffering due to a significant loss and will equip your church members to respond in helpful ways. Our last and final window, window 8, serving the world.
While it is often easy to hear and respond to the call of a spouse or a close friend who is in need, it's more difficult to hear and respond to the call to love and serve those who are suffering hundreds or thousands of miles away, strangers to us. Humans have an instinct to protect their own, those who are close to them. But our faith tradition is riddled with stories about loving the outsider, caring for the person who doesn't deserve our care. Christian faith calls us to rise above the instinct to care exclusively for our own and to respond to the multitudes. We have even recently become aware that when we conserve natural resources, we are responding to the call to care for people who aren't even born yet. This is the call to love in big ways. God, who is universal and mysterious, calls us to love more than we can imagine and opens the door of opportunity to encounter divine presence in the unknown. So there they are, the 8 windows of calling. If you are to become an effective instrument of calling, you have to practice kind of like a singer who wants to perfect her voice. It's important for you to spend some time learning about and reflecting on these 8 windows and how they have opened or need to open in your own life. Only then will you be ready to notice and respond to the windows opening in the lives of others.
Okay, I think I'm back. Can you hear me? All right, very good. I want to just say that he said something in the last window that I thought was so profound and really important. And he said the Christian faith calls us to rise above the instinct to care exclusively for our own and to respond to the multitudes who cry out for peace and justice, no matter who they are or where they live. And that is so important for us, especially in today's time. And so in your journal, as we complete this section, page 13, I want you to think about your experience of responding to the call to love and care for those close to you versus your response to love and care for those who are far away from you. I want you to think about that. This program will help your church members, help them notice when someone is sensing the call to this biggest and most universal way of loving, and will equip your church members to respond in helpful ways. These 8 windows are great ways for us to begin to engage in our calling and help others engage in theirs. And if you're like me, some of these questions kind of emotionally kind of had you all over the place, because they did for me. And so I want to thank you for taking time to process and to think. And again, you will have the opportunity when you're done with this and go home and have your journal and your private time to finish working through these questions and seeing where you are and where you'd like to go with this. I appreciate you all letting me share and guide us through these 8 callings, these 8 windows. And if you're like me, you need to take a break. And so we're going to give you the opportunity to take that break, stretch your legs, refill your coffee cup, whatever you need to do. But you have 5 minutes. So we're going to give you 5 minutes. So at 10:36, we want you to come back. 5 minutes, take your video off, whatever you need to do, back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming back. And most of you are so timely, here like 30 seconds early instead of slipping in late. That's awesome. While we're waiting for the rest of the folks to come back, your journal on page 14, if you haven't turned to that yet, has a nice little synopsis of what Robin was covering and some more things to think about if you'd like to do that, or continue to relax and enjoy your beverage.
And I see Reverend J.P. Robles back on, and so he's coming up in the next section here. I get to introduce him, and is going to talk to you about moving beyond the awkwardness of meaningful conversations. So Reverend J.P. Robles, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Robin. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all. I am a priest at the Sacred Commons, and we had about, I think, 6 people here from the Sacred Commons, so it's good to see them. And to those of you who I know from St. John's, it's good to see you too. And if I don't know you, hi, my name's JP. It's really wonderful that we can all be together on this Saturday morning. I am not a morning person. I'm just going to say that. I don't even like people who are morning people, but I will just move beyond that awkwardness, because that's what I'm supposed to talk about. Moving beyond awkwardness. Moving beyond awkwardness is a category that I think I enjoy because I like awkward moments, especially awkward moments in church around Christians, seeing how they handle that. Zoom has provided many awkward moments over this pandemic. I was a part of a Zoom call where a priest started undressing and didn't know that his camera was on. And we were all like, I love it. Anyways, awkward moments will come. They're going to come. I think one of the things that's really important for me in terms of vocation is that we don't create this dichotomy of sacred versus secular, that we don't take vocation and throw it into the category of institution, because once we do that, we do a big disservice. I guess what I'm trying to say is calling is just mirroring the love that God has poured out into your life back into the world. And we can't bifurcate that. We can't divide that. That is just being present and mirroring the love of God to other people. Awkward moments will come when you're open to that kind of living. But you can push past those awkward moments, and that's what I want to talk about. You can move beyond that. So I'm going to introduce some ideas, some situations, and we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what it means to be an instrument of calling in our world today. It is very common and very easy to miss opportunities, to speak to people, to listen to people, to be open and hospitable to people. It's easy to miss those opportunities if we're not careful. And so I'm going to give you some examples, and I want you to think about what feelings or emotions or what these scenarios stir up within you. Here's one. A spouse does something well or something kind, and the other spouse notices but doesn't comment on it. So there's an example. Here's another one. A young man is at a family gathering and sees that one of his relatives seems distracted, and he chooses to find another less challenging conversation to participate in. Anybody been there? I relate to that one. Here's another example. A clerk at a store is particularly helpful. The thought enters the customer's mind to tell the manager about the good experience, but the note never gets written. A teenager is learning how to drive a car, and the parent's comments only focus on what the child is doing wrong rather than highlighting what the child is doing right. And then finally, this last scenario. A neighbor across the street who is recently divorced waves from his yard the other neighbor feels a nudge to start a conversation, but decides not to. So I want to invite you to reflect and respond to these following questions. Here's the first one, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this. What do you think prevents us from saying something meaningful in these kinds of situations? What do you think prevents us from saying something meaningful in these kind of situations? Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat here, don't know what to say from Dr. Tom. Yep. Reverend Gail says time. Absolutely. Anybody else? Heather, that's great. Fear. Yes. Yes. Cindy says laziness, an easy way out. Nikki says time, agenda. I don't want to. Yep. Douglas. Oh, Doug. Doug says unsolicited advice. Yeah. Josh says the feeling that we don't have the qualities needed to help. Absolutely. Nelson says lack of focus. Reverend Gail says avoiding commitment. These are all great. Yes, don't want to get caught in quicksand. I like that was something. Thank you for that. Yeah. Eileen says reluctance to say the wrong thing. Yes. These are all great. Thank you. Here's another question for you to reflect on. Thank you for participating in this, by the way. These are great. Your responses are great. What are the possible good things? So let's flip the coin here. What are the possible good things that could happen if meaningful conversations happened in these moments? So what are some good things that might occur if we're willing to get over that hurdle of the awkward moment or just moving beyond it? Oh, thank you, Doug. That's great. Lasting friendships. Reverend Gail says people will listen to me when I need it. Yeah. Wonderful. A new friendship, yes, or a deeper one. Seeing acts of love, experiencing love, all good. Thank you for that. Human connections, expanded perspective, sorry. Deepening love, yes. We can be taught something. That's good. Thank you, Nikki. Diana says encouragement. Absolutely. Dr. Tom, gratitude for saying hello. Linda, hey Linda, raising someone's self-esteem. Yep. Marilyn says, you may be that person's first conversation or human, oh, that's huge, or human interaction that day. Thank you, Marilyn. Nelson says, building of one's confidence. Yes. Show that we care. All good. This is great. I gave this example earlier when we were meeting together for this session. And I told the story about, I was at the doctor's office a few weeks ago, and we were, I noticed that I had to wear a mask and the doctor came in wearing, have you seen those really tight, small N95 masks that the doctors have been wearing? And it just looked so uncomfortable. I mean, it was one of those masks where when you take it off, I'm almost certain there'd be lines on her face, you know? And after the appointment, she was so kind. After the appointment, and maybe you've been in this situation too, there's always that awkward, all right, now what? We both have to leave this room. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I know from what I've heard from nurses and doctors that this is very stressful for them. She gets up, she says, is there anything else? I say, no, thank you so much. And I was about to leave and she was heading down the hallway this way and I was heading down the hallway that way. And there was that moment. It was awkward because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I was free enough or if I should say this, but I turned around and I said, all right, let's just do this. And I turned around and I said, can I tell you something? And she stopped and she turned around and I said, it means so much to me that you would care for me today. Thank you so much for caring for me. And in that moment, tears. And you could just see that one small comment of gratitude. Thank you for your care. It unlocked something, or it created this sort of human connection. But I had to get over that awkward moment. And I think that if we make ourselves available, the Spirit of God can do amazing things to and through us. Kathy says, "Hey, Mom, show that we care." Yes, that's good. Thank you. I think that's my mom, Kathy. There might be multiple Kathys. If you're not my mother who said that, hi. All right. I got to stitch this up. Here we go. Let's close this out. All right. So thank you guys for your responses. They were wonderful. The first step to having meaningful conversation and meaningful calling conversations is to move beyond that awkwardness. You can do it. You can do it. Take that step. Keep your attention focused on the good possibilities. So we were talking about what makes us nervous about engaging the other, but don't focus your attention on that. Keep your mind, keep your heart focused on the good possibilities that can result from your effort to simply begin the conversation. There are so many people out there who need, every one of us needs that kind of love, needs that kind of connection. When we don't take advantage of these opportunities, we are like, I like this, we are like musical instruments. I didn't write this. I think this was Jim. I could be wrong. We are like musical instruments that never make a sound. We play our part when we engage the other, and that creates harmony between our lives and other people's lives, and that enriches us both. One of the saddest things I've ever seen is a beautiful instrument unused. Don't be that. You are a wonderful instrument of God. He's made you unique, and the music you can make with your life that he can make through you is just wonderful. It's beautiful. So don't be that instrument on the shelf, on the wall. Play the music God has given you to play. I thought that was a wonderful metaphor. Thank you all for your time and for being a part of this. I'm going to pass it along now to Reverend Gail Catanella, who I love and who is a spiritual guide in my life. And I want to thank her for being an instrument of calling, not only to myself, but to all of those who are fortunate enough to know her.
Thank you. Great job, JP. Not just the introduction, the whole thing. So my name is Gail Catanella, and I'm the priest at St. John's Episcopal Church in Youngstown. And I know or have met many of you. And if I haven't met you, I am so delighted that you're here today. This is important work that we're doing, and I'm encouraged and hopeful that you care enough to be here on a Saturday morning. So thank you so much. We've heard what call is and explored a little bit about how that moves within us. We've seen opportunities in the world where we can identify a call, where people might need to connect with God in a call. And we've seen how much that matters to us and how much that matters to other people. But as JP was talking about, starting the conversation is hard, and we've established that we need to. But now we have to acknowledge that we have so many opportunities to participate in meaningful conversation with people we know and people we don't know. And as we discovered earlier, a lot of times we don't take those opportunities. We let them pass by. So in this program, we're encouraging you and equipping you to capture more of those moments, to create opportunities for God's love to guide you and to guide people in need. And we use those 8 windows of calling to notice when someone's giving us an opportunity. Thank you very much, right? To become an instrument of calling. So when one of those things comes up and a conversation could be had, how do we start it? How do we engage in a conversation? In a previous vocation, I taught counselors how to talk to people. I taught people how to have conversations. And one of the things that really struck me in that process is that we hear all kinds of things, but we choose what we listen to. And so the first thing we need to do is be curious and listen. When someone is talking to us about something that's happening in their lives, good, bad, questions, answers, where does God fit into all of this for me? Maybe you could help me with this. The first thing to do is to be curious and to realize that you don't have to have, and in fact do not have, all the answers. You don't want to switch into, oh, I've been through this mode, or let me tell you about my experience of whatever the person's talking about. Instead, you want to take a deep breath and you want to be prepared to listen. And here are some ways that you might start a conversation. You might say, you know, if you are really open to talking to me about this, tell me more. Tell me more. It's as simple as that. Tell me your story. What's going on here? That sounds really important. It sounds really big. What's going on for you here? What do you think that means? What is that saying to you? Hopefully, prying is not an issue, and you can just use your own words. You can. That's what the journal's for, is to start exploring your own stories and your own words, and what might be something that that you say to start a conversation that can make a difference. So think for a moment about your own way of starting conversations, your own way of engaging people. And what are some things that you might say to get a conversation started? Put them in the chat. In your own words, what might be a conversation starter for you? Glad to see you today, absolutely. Tom Dukes did that. I don't think that's what you meant to say, Eileen, but maybe it was. How are you feeling today? Thanks, Logan. Love your hair. That's good. What's going on, really? Have you seen those PSA conversations where they encourage you to start a conversation even though it's awkward? Just get it started. What are you up to today? That's great. So as you practice this, oh, lovely. Thank you. Gently asking the hard question. Thanks, Eileen. So we know that we start these conversations and we want to find the words that we're comfortable. But once you've kind of sorted that out, where do you take it? You know, where do you go with that? What we encourage you to do is become what's called a detached presence. Detached presence, meaning that you can step back and be a good listener. You can step back and choose to become detached from your own concerns, from your own story, and really participate in the story of another person. We know when we're being listened to, right? We know when people are paying attention to us, and we know when people aren't. So what's it like when someone doesn't listen to you? What's it like when you have something going on in your life or in your heart and people don't pay attention? What's that? How do you feel? Put that in the chat for me. How do you feel when people aren't paying attention? Well, that's a behavior, absolutely. Looking at your phone. We're going to talk about behaviors too. What are some of the things that show that they're not listening? But we're putting let me run away, a burden, frustrated, not valued, lonely. Absolutely. Unimportant, mood swing, dehumanized. Yes, absolutely. Diminished, makes you feel like a waste of their time. Wow, that's profound. So how do you know, what are some of the behaviors that you see in people that make you feel that way? Tom already put someone's listening or looking at their phone while they're talking to you. What are some other things that you've seen? What's a sign for you that people aren't paying attention? Eye contact, yeah. Looking away, looking over your shoulder. not responding. They don't have their own peace or balance very good. That's so true. Sighing, talking over me, waiting to ask their own question, right? You know when a person is waiting to say something and waiting, just finish talking so that I can say what I want to say. That comes across. Interrupting, absolutely. So what about when you feel listened to? How does it feel to feel listened to? Safe, yeah, valued, absolutely. Wanted, accepted, included, loved. It does feel inspiring, doesn't it? It feels refreshing. And what are some behaviors that you notice in other people when you feel really listened to? It does feel heartwarming, Therese. What do you notice about their behavior that makes you feel so connected? Leaning in, right? Cogent responses, absolutely. They're obviously paying attention. They smile at you like they care. Eye contact, absolutely. They continue asking relevant questions. They desire to hear more. You can tell they're engaged in what's happening. You can tell there's a connection. Nodding, open-ended questions, absolutely. Leaving you room, right? A closer glimpse of what it might be like to be in Christ's presence. Wow. That's what we're aiming for, isn't it? To share the love of Christ with one another. Okay, thank you for that. So we went through that so that you could narrow down and make concrete behaviors that work and behaviors that don't work. I used to do premarital counseling with groups of people, and the one behavior that people often identified in couples was the remote and use of the remote, you know, trying to have a conversation while someone's flipping through channels. And again, they can hear you, right? But they aren't listening to you. So when you find yourself in a circumstance where a meaningful conversation might happen, you have to pay attention to certain things. You have to pay attention to your body and how you're engaging and how you're using your body. Are you leaning in? Are you making eye contact? Are you facing that person? You know, I mean, sometimes just moving a chair so that you're facing that person makes a connection happen. And it doesn't take much to say, let's move to a space where I can hear you, or let me move my chair, or is this a good place to have this conversation, or should we move into, you know, another room or wherever? Watch the environment. If it's loud, if it's distracting, you know, when I go to a restaurant with somebody, I try to sit so I'm not facing the door because I am easily distracted. Just going to put that out there. It's true. I'm looking. Who's that? Wait, what? Oh. It's so much better for me to have a meaningful conversation with someone when I'm not facing the door so that I can't see anything. I just know that about myself. And so I try to incorporate the things I know about myself so that I can have good conversations with people. So we watch our behavior, we watch our attention, we watch the environment. You know, maybe we're hungry, or maybe we're thirsty, or maybe it's cold, or maybe, you know, I don't know. But whatever it is, make sure that you are setting things up to succeed. So many times we don't think through the environment or our own need for a cup of coffee in the process. So a detached presence is a way of listening with empathy. And the goal is to give the other person an experience of truly being heard. So here are some other things you might think about, some other characteristics of detached presence. I don't tell someone what to do. You know, a lot of times people, it feels like they're asking for advice, but really they don't want advice. They don't want to know what you would do in that situation. They want you to listen and pay attention to them. So don't offer advice. Don't tell a person how to think. Don't judge the person, no matter what you hear. If you invite a person to tell you what's in their heart, it's hard stuff. And a lot of times people will tell you things that are embarrassing or personal, and they're counting on you to accept them as they are. One of the things that Brian Stevenson says are, we are so much more than the worst thing we've ever done. And that's what we want to pay attention to. Not this moment of crisis or even this moment of joy, but what could be. So don't judge. Besides, if you judge others, then you're opening yourself up to every bad thing you've ever done. And you know that you deserve to be judged by on a couple of those things. So back off from that. Trust the person is in God's hands. Trust that if you listen authentically, God will be there. You know, don't discount the fact that there are 3 beings in this conversation: you, the person you're talking to, and God. And God is there directing and moving your heart and giving you the words and blessing the interaction. So don't discount God's power in this powerful thing that you are attempting. Just to stay curious. And Tom had brought up open-ended questions. You know, I have a family of introverts. How that happened, I don't know. But I have children who are introverts. And so I can't say, you know, do you want spaghetti for supper? Because they're going to give me a monosyllabic answer. I have to say, what do you want for supper? Because that's my best chance of actually finding out. You know, open-ended questions are so important. And they also ensure that you are not directing the conversation. You know, they make sure that you are open to what's actually true and not what you think is true. And you might be smart and you might be savvy and you might be empathetic and a good listener, but you cannot know what is going on in that person's heart unless you ask them. And so be sure that you aren't thinking that you know the answer to this question, or you know what's coming next, or, oh, I know that person, I know what they're thinking. No, you don't. So continue to be curious and ask those open-ended questions. And finally, when you're listening to what they're saying, make sure that you're checking in. Make sure that you are telling them what you're observing. You know, I was talking to a person one time, and I asked them, "Are you okay?" And they said, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." What does that say to you? No, I'm not fine. Oh yeah, I'm doing great, no problem. Or you see them turning red, or you see them crying, or you see that, or you also have just heard a part of the story that was really important, and you want to say to them, I'm just making sure I understand that this made you angry. And then the person says, no, I was hurt. Or no, I wasn't angry. I understood why they did what they did. I was embarrassed. You know, so checking in is so important, making sure that you're getting it. That shows that you are listening in a detached and deeper way. And it's a way to engage people that matters. So any questions so far? I've been blah, blah, blahing. Anybody have a question? Check in the chat. Feel free to put it in there if something comes up that you want to know more about. So you're engaging the person in a discussion. You're a detached presence. You're listening with full attention. You're offering some thoughts about making sure that you understand, and you're not giving advice. So again, asking those powerful questions, those follow-up questions, is a great way to keep the conversation going. You know, a lot of times conversations get to that awkward phase and you're not quite sure whether it's done or whether it's not done. You can simply say, what more do I need to know about this? Or what more do you want to say about this? Or what haven't we talked about that's still important to you? Or, you know, what's really going on in your heart in this minute? You know, you can keep the conversation going with a simple question, and they might say, nothing, we're good, that's it. But at least you asked, right? At least you made sure that there wasn't more to say. There are some sample questions in the journal that you can check out. And we're going to do a small group discussion in a moment, but I want to talk about a few more things first. So in addition to asking these open-ended questions and expressing what you're noticing and asking if what you're noticing is true, just make sure that everybody, well, okay, so you want to do those things. And again, you want to say, do I have that right? You know, am I hearing you correctly? And then simply ask for more information if you need it. So you can ask questions, you can observe them. So you've gotten the whole picture. They've told you their story. They're really, they've really poured their heart out to you, and it's been a holy moment. Then what? Then we move to action. As this huge thing that's happening in their lives and then say, okay, great, thanks, good talk. No, we want to move to the next thing, right? So your detached presence, your genuine curiosity, your observation statements have encouraged people to talk about what they're experiencing. And if you think that this person is open to learning more, that's when you connect them with the All Called website. That's when you say, there's a place you can go to get some expert advice, to get some expert help, to give you some more to think about this. And you might also say, I understand that you're not a churchy person. I mean, it's highly likely in this day and age that the person you're talking to is not attached to a faith community, is not attached to a faith practice, is maybe spiritual but not religious. And the problem with being spiritual but not religious, in my humble opinion, is that you don't have a community. And that's what we need. We need a community to help us get through life. We cannot do this hard thing called life by ourselves, you know, in any stretch. So that's what All Called does. It helps people to connect, first of all, to a virtual community, and then maybe to an in-person community. So you might say, I have some information about a really good free resource that might help you. And you don't have to connect to a church to access that. But would you be interested in checking out this website? What are maybe some words that you might use? Those are my words. What's a way that you might transition? You can write them down in your journal, or you can put them up on the chat. What might you say to transition a person to action? Make plans to talk further. Absolutely, good one. That's coming too. I found this helped me. Great. Let's talk about action. What do you feel like doing? Would you like to know more? Here's a resource. Excellent, excellent. Would you be willing to help each other? Coffee. Good, Linda. So absolutely. Invite people to a future All Called workshop. Absolutely. That also is a definite possibility there. So we're going to have, like I said, a little one-on-one opportunity, but I would also, Robin's bringing up her own personal experience here. I would also like to say that once you've connected people to the All Called website, you guys are all saying that that is not the end, right? There is a possibility for more conversation. There's a possibility for moving into something more. So you should definitely affirm the fact that they were brave enough to talk to you. You should definitely affirm the fact that they stepped out of their comfort zone, stepped out of their bubble, and shared with another person. And that it was you is a great honor, right? It's such a great honor when people choose to do that with you. You can say that I see this really matters to you, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you find some answers soon. You know, maybe this is a situation where this is the end, but it also could be that you keep the door open by saying something like, if you'd like to talk more, you know where to find me. You know, exchange information, make sure that make sure that you have some of your own words available for how you want to keep things going and how you can continue to be a loving, supportive presence in this person's life. So, any questions? Sometimes it's not our will or doing, it's the Spirit moving. You are right, Nikki. That is so true. All right, at this point, Cindy is going to break you up into dyads, which means two of you. And this is what I'd like you to do. I would like you one-on-one to take turns talking about your insecurities in this process. What scares you? What do you wish you knew more about? What does it feel like going into the possibility of these conversations? We're going to give you how long, Cindy? 10 minutes. So you each have 5 minutes to listen and to respond. So be sure you cut it off at 5 minutes so everybody has a chance to talk about what they're feeling, but also pay attention and give each other feedback about how the person responded to you when you were talking about what was going on inside you. Ready, set, go.
Okay, and Sam and Linda, there might be a pause while I put you in a new group. So thank you in advance for your patience. Linda, did you get the invitation? There should have been oh, good. All right. Perfect.
All right, folks, how are we doing here? Is everybody doing okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going.
All right, everybody, is everybody back?
We're back.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, I hope that was a good experience to share, and Cindy is going to close us out and help us to reflect on that. Take it away, Cindy.
Hello, I'm Cindy Case, and I'm a member at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Austintown, and very grateful. Oh, there's a little alarm to make sure that we're back in session. Let me turn that off. Wanted to start off by asking, was it easier to listen or to share? You can either unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. Was it easier to listen to the other person or to share your own thoughts?
I think it was equal for Sam and I.
Nice.
We kind of bounced ideas off each other and we talked back and forth. So it was pretty equal with us.
Great. All right, Josh, can I put you on the spot to ask why listening was harder?
All right, let me mute. I think we had a really great, I had a great conversation with Heather. I think for me in general is listening is much more difficult because sometimes we're, at least me, like I'm conditioned to, I don't know, just think of the next thing to say in the conversation. Mm-hmm. To get out of the awkward situations. Like, okay, if I have something to say, it'll be fine. But that you don't listen when you do that. You're just trying to advance the conversation. You're not really thinking about what the other person is saying. And so for me, that's a habit I'm trying to break. And I think Heather did a great job of helping me with that.
Thanks, Josh. That's why we take some of this time to practice, because we need to practice that sometimes. Doug, did I see you waving your hand?
Actually, I was waving to Eileen because I thought we had a really nice and balanced conversation. And I put that up in the chat. So, and it looked like she had read it. So I figured, oh, I'll wave hi.
Great.
Thank you. I agree.
Excellent. Well, for those of you that found it difficult on either end, it might be nice to find someone you're already close with, a friend, to practice a little bit more in conversations and just tell them up front that you're trying to work on sharing your story or listening more intently, because that will just make it easier. And the more you practice it, the more you will feel comfortable doing that when you get into those different conversations with people that you meet at your church, at the grocery store, at work, etc. Well, I don't know if you can believe it or not, but we're almost at the time to close. I think the 2 hours went very quickly, and I am so excited that you were all part of this. I was going to thank you all for being the first training in Northeast Ohio, but Gail mentioned that we're actually doing the first training in the country at this point of the Instruments of Calling. So you guys have been fantastic, and congratulations. You all should get little gold stars for that. You will, however, get an email follow-up with evaluation that we're going to ask you for some feedback, and a reminder that allcalled.org is the website that has the tools that you might want to take people to. And it's a nice thing for you to also look through. You'll see that there's a self-guided tool that you can walk through and look into those 8 windows again and try to really see how God might be calling you. Thank you, Tom, for adding that in the chat, allcalled.org. So unless there are any pressing closing comments you have, I'm going to move us into a closing prayer. Okay. Well, thank you again. Hope you have a wonderful Advent season. And I am just killing time till I move to the sharing of my screen. And hopefully you can all see a PowerPoint. And if you'll turn to page 20 in your journal, which is the last page, you'll see the scripture reading that is part of our prayer. Just ask that you take a moment to breathe deeply and take in all of the wonderful words the Holy Spirit has been given to us in these past 2 hours. And breathe out any anxieties we might have. Really just feel that sense of Christ's presence with us, within us, and around us. We know that all creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For we who hope for what is seen, but what if we hope for what makes what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. I'm going to read that again because I think I messed it up. For who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought. But the very Spirit intercedes with sighs too deep for words. And God, who searches the heart, knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. We know all things work together for the good of those who love God. We are called according to his purpose. I'd like you to take a moment to think, now that we've gone through this training, what do you notice in this reading about desire, need, hope, or calling? What does it mean now to you to be an instrument of calling? And again, you can write that in the journal, or if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat box. Lord, we offer up these insights as we pray. Jesus, I am humbled that you considered me worthy to be used in ways big and small to accomplish your will here on earth. Help me respond without hesitation whenever I perceive your voice calling me into action. In your powerful and loving name, we pray. Amen. And that officially concludes our training for today. Again, we are so grateful that you were a part of it. Look for that email with the evaluation and know that we will be continuing to pray for you as you look for opportunities to be open, to be instruments of calling for others. God bless you and have a great day.
Thank you all.
God bless everybody.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
God bless. Thank you. Happy Advent,
you.
everyone.
See everybody.